Welcome back to the hall stairs landing series. We've done a few things since the last video, but I'm going to try and wrap it up in this one video, the stuff that we've done in the last week or so. So the plan is to get all this woodwork downstairs finished and hopefully make a start upstairs as well. And I'm going to show you kind of how I'm doing it and what I've been using along the way. One decision we came to just before Christmas was that we're going to panel the lower half of the wall downstairs. We're obviously using very matte paints and they're not that child friendly. You know, if you've got dogs and pushchairs or just general kind of brushing down past them, they're going to be susceptible to getting marked. So that's why we've started using this paneling. And I think, although it might not be the original sort of traditional look, it's still going to give that sort of period feel. We're going to use the dado rails anyway, so I've used those to cap the top of the panels. I could have made paneling like I did in the kitchen if I flipped the camera around. I could have gone this route and made my own paneling like I did in the kitchen. That worked really well for what we needed it for in there, and I'll pop a little video link below to show you how I made that. The main problem about doing it that way is I kind of had to use a 9mm or 12mm MDF board, and I just didn't have the depth on our skirting boards and on the wall to come out that far, so it really had to be the bare minimum. So you can get Matchboard sort of reed and bead panelling in MDF, and that's normally 6mm thick, 6 or 9mm, and you can get it in full 8x4 sheets, or you can get it in smaller panels. And this is kind of a version of that. I found it at Homebase of all places, and it is that reed and bead style. A little bit dubious about using this sort of wood grain effect. Thought it might look a bit fake, but actually once you've got the paint on, it's surprisingly good, and it's also quite easy to fit. It's got this kind of tongue and groove ends, and they slot into each other. This is clearly a really DIY based product. It's even got sticky strips on the back. And I thought that was really naff, and I thought, well, I'll rip those off and I'll use some proper adhesive, and we'll shoot some brads into it as well to hold it in place. But actually it works surprisingly well. You can kind of fill the middle bit here, like it suggests actually, with some construction adhesive like grip fill, and then you can position it on the wall. And what this does, these sticky strips, is kind of holds it in place whilst the adhesive goes off. And it means you don't have to like wedge it against the wall. You don't really have to use any fixings, and it kind of works. So fair play to the product. It seems to be alright. Anyway, that's enough talking. I'll give you a look at what I've done so far and kind of how it's going on. So this section here I did as a bit of a test. The skirting boards and dado rail were of course undercoated already, and then I've just painted the undercoat onto the boards as well. You can see that wood grain showing through, but I think after a couple of coats of the eggshell that'll kind of be a bit more subtle. You see here, that's how I've sat the dado rail down onto the top of it, and the paint, or maybe a little bit of caulk, will fill any kind of hairline gap there. But that kind of gave it a nice, it was just deep enough the bottom of this trim here that it would sit on top of the paneling. If you were retrofitting this paneling, you can sit it onto the skirting board, but I've actually fit the skirting board over the top of it because I had that, you know, deep architrave. I could get away with that at the end. And here's a look at kind of all the three things tying together, or the four things I guess, with the architrave, dado, skirting and paneling. So I think by the time it's all finished, that's going to give us a really durable way of keeping the wall safe and wipeable. And what I'm going to do now is just fit the whole of this wall here, so I can show you how I've done it. So I think at some point we probably will drop a stud wall down under these stairs and just have some drawers or cupboards under here to make use of that space. For now we're quite enjoying having the space because you can have the pushchair, and you can, you know, the dog bed sits under there as well. So for now I'm going to panel the whole of the wall and leave it all exposed. We're going to finish it so it all looks nice. There's some brickwork right down the bottom here which I'm going to paint just the same as the wall, and then we'll bring the panelling along the wall here, and I'll just have to cut the angle on the first, probably the first sheet and a half Yeah, probably the first 2 sheets will have an angle so they kind of finish up to here. Fit all those first, then we'll drop the dado rail on top of it. Skirting board will go on. This is the back of the safe, which is accessed from the dining room. Now, we haven't really decided what we're going to do with that, so I'm going to leave it and we'll probably just paint it the same as the wall, or even white actually, so it's the same as the panelling. But again, that'll probably be concealed inside the cupboard when we get around to it. The other thing I've been doing is I wanted the top of the panelling to be a metre, rather than sit the panelling right down onto the floor, where it was probably a little bit on the low side, with bearing in mind the height of our ceilings. So the panels themselves measure 91 centimetres, so I'm just lifting them off the floor, and of course that gap at the bottom will be concealed by the skirting board, and I just think that kind of gives it a better look anyway in this hallway. One thing you do have to remember on these is, because they're tongue and groove ends, you want to kind of disregard the tongue. So we can square that off, but you want to measure up on the actual board itself, ignoring that tongue. No idea if that's going to work, but let's go and cut it and see. I doubt this is going to be right the first time. Sometimes I surprise myself. So the next job is to scribe around the safe. What I've done is put the second board slotted into that first one, which we know is right, and I can mark off where the angle's going to start. The safe's fairly square. We may trim around that anyway. So I've cut the second piece to go around. I've actually cut it by hand. It cuts pretty well with a fine tooth saw. There's just a little bit of trimming to do to get it straight. So I think what I'm going to do, now I'm happy with these, I'm going to get those in position first. We won't be able to slot them together separately, so we'll have to put them in as one piece. From there on it's very straightforward, so I'll get some adhesive on this one. One other thing I might do is, this is just some strong tape. I'm just going to tape them together so they don't come apart as we're fitting them. And then just a load of adhesive. And then we'll just take off these, which seems to take me forever normally. I don't think I need to on that one, but on the other wall I did just shoot a few brads in to hold it in place, and I may do it on those bigger panels as well, but because it's being kind of held up by this safe anyway and it's kind of wedged in, that's nice. Perfect. Right, on to the easy ones now. Actually there is still a little bit of spring there where it's not flush against the wall, so what I'm going to do is just tack that in there. Because remember, our dado rail's only got a tiny little reveal to sit on top of that. So yeah, so it's only that top line I really want held flush, just so that it sits nice into the dado. What I'm going to do now, rather than just sticking with the same method, which would be to kind of put that there and cut out a massive bit, which should effectively waste where the safe is, I'm actually going to start my next board here, and then from a bit of scrap, cut out the next section. Should still slot into that tongue there, but it won't mean that I've got a whole wasted board, if that makes sense. Then I've got another scrap piece, which is just a narrower piece where I've started a wall, or ended a wall on the other side. I'll start with that piece, so it still leaves my tongue to carry on with, but it means I don't waste another board. Line down there. Check that one. Size. I think I might just use some sandpaper because I want it to be as snug as possible. So I had to pause on the panelling until I could get the architrave fitted. Now I've got the architrave in there to finish up to, I just want to run a straight line across to work off. It's going to be a bit easier than measuring out each one. This way also means that if you've got an uneven floor, you're not going to have the whole thing on a wonk. So it really should speed up quite a bit now. So you can see how it slots in. Get away with a little bit of correction as well. So if you find you're just going off a fraction, you can just open it up a little bit. So I'm not going to get a full panel in here. So we'll dry fit one, and then I may put them together first and then sit it in as one. So if you, a bit like tiling, if you flip over the board, we can then mark our cut line on that. That's all cut, dust mask with MDF, of course. So I did consider doing this all in pine tongue and groove, but the pine you can get, the stuff that's quite thin, the 10mm, is just so brittle. It's far too knotty as well, which is fine if you're going to varnish it, but if you're painting it's just a pain. And you know, I think this was a fairly decent option. And although this is concrete, I am just going to tack it in a little bit, and hopefully I can hide the nails afterwards. Oh dear, you're meant to be a gun dog. It's only a bang. When you do a wall like this and you get to the end and you've cut that, it's a bit like flooring, you can then take the cut side and start that in the corner for your next wall, and then you can carry on. That way you shouldn't have any waste at all. Okay, so I've now managed to finish all of the panelling. And I've put the dado rails along the top, so we're pretty much there and ready to do the undercoat now. Everything seemed to go fairly well. There's a few really niggly bits where instead of doing a return, I kind of scribed it into the architrave. I'll show you a little bit of that. But apart from that, it's all pretty good and all nice and clean. So I've brushed down everything first, and what I'm going to do is paint it now with the undercoat, and then any of those little holes from the nails or any other little scratches or gaps I'll fill after the undercoat. That way it kind of shows up all the holes a little bit easier once I've got that first coat on. So where I had this sort of odd angle, I've actually just put a bead, a really fine doweling down there, which kind of matches up with the moulding as well. So that was just the easiest way of finishing that corner. Again, lots of different angles with these dados, so I've tried to kind of scrub things in. A little bit of filling I'll need to do there. Same down the bottom on the skirting, where I've had to scribe it into the architrave. I was going to return it in, which is what I did on the skirting, but actually it looks better, I think, when it's matched into the architrave like that. And the last little section here, which is quite nice and neat, sandwiches between the two. So it's getting pretty late, but I thought if I can get all this undercoat done tonight, hopefully the top coat, filling, top coat, caulking, all that sort of stuff tomorrow, and we can wrap it up this week. And that'll be all of the downstairs completely finished. And then we just got basically the dados and architraves to go on upstairs, which is less urgent, but I can do that next week. And here's a couple of other videos from the series. Click on the left-hand video to see how we undercoated all the woodwork and mouldings, and click on the right-hand side to see the architrave being fitted.